Welcome back, everybody. It's Ben from the Ben and Bev channel. And today we're going to be talking about Moon Knight's series finale, Episode 6, Gods and Monsters. At the end of last week's episode, we actually found Marc reaching a state of peace in the field of reeds. He'd reached the end of his journey with Tarat into the afterlife, and I wasn't really sure going into this week's finale how exactly they were going to go about closing off all of those plot points, as well as addressing all of these new mysteries within the asylum and afterlife spaces. Thankfully, this week's episode actually picks up in the real world, as we get to see what Layla did immediately after Marc was shot. And while she's trying to find a way to re-imprison Amit within Arthur Harrow, we also have Marc not really coming to terms with this peace that he now has. It's part of him, Stephen, is left at the foot of Khonshu's tomb in this purgatory-like state. Admitting to Tarat that reaching the field of reeds and having a moment of silence and peace within his mind isn't everything Marc Spector wants, as he can't see himself leaving Stephen behind. And as he goes through the episode trying to reach a new point of peace with Stephen, all of our figures need to come together, whether that's Layla in the real world, Marc and Stephen in the afterlife, or the physical form of Khonshu speaking both to Layla and Stephen in this episode. The gods themselves being a really massive part of this week's episode, and though it has a very superhero movie ending with a whole bunch of cape and giant CGI gods fighting, it's those moments in between in the setup that we've gotten with this Marc Stephen story and different dynamics between Layla, Khonshu, and Arthur Harrow, as well as with the new additions of Amit as a physical presence, adds so much weight to these big superhero moments. The visual palette and soundtrack are once again stunning as usual, and accompanied with this newfound sense of oneness between all these different realities and versions of Marc Spector, this acts as a really neat, short, and action-packed finale to the series. And I'm not joking when I say the after-credits scene completely flips this whole show's script on its head. And though it isn't the most surprising twist at the very end, it's still one that landed for me. This whole series has felt overall like the perfect embodiment of all the different Moon Knight comics shoved together. It's almost like the face of Moon Knight the comic series as well as Moon Knight the fandom all shoved into one. Did a really great job with the in-jokes in this series, not making it bogged down too much by comic book lore, but just throwing little jabs in there to make the comic book fans appreciate it. And the handling of the mental health aspects as well as the Egyptology aspects were the center focus for the whole thing. Something that, at least for me, separated it from the rest of the MCU, and I love that even in this final episode, when they have an opportunity to connect it to the bigger MCU, especially in the grand scheme of things with Multiverse of Madness coming out literally tomorrow, they still kept it entirely contained in about this character. Oscar Isaac absolutely slays it once again, whether he's Marc, Stephen, or any other personality. The presence of Khonshu is felt, and the story arc they went with Calamawy's Layla Al-Ful, absolutely phenomenal. I wasn't expecting her to take the changes in this episode that she did, but in this series overall, she had a really fulfilling arc as a side character, and by the end of this series, she'd come into her own. Something that both Marc and Stephen can't say about themselves is they're still kind of coming to terms with things at the end of this. Which brings me to another highlight. I absolutely love the ending to this. It's a very ambiguous ending, unlike anything else we've seen in the MCU, where it really leaves room for interpretation on where these events can go, and while certain things are laid out obvious truths, the elements of mystical insanity are always clouding our perception. While Moon Knight has been a favorite of mine for a while, the way Marvel handled him in this series was entirely different than the approach I was expecting them to do. Even though there's a twist at every corner and some episodes leave you in a state of unease and confusion each week, you always came back wanting to know where this mystery would lead. A great job of peeling back the layers without revealing too much of the mystery and saving some of the best aspects of it for last. Phenomenal cap on an overall complex and very different superhero story. One that was both directed and shot with a high sense to artistic precision and embodies a new stage in the MCU when it comes to how a singular vision can change a story within this big web of a universe. I am extremely biased because Moon Knight is one of my favorite superheroes. This has been the strongest MCU TV show outing so far, and though Loki was definitely a close second for me, I just absolutely love that show. The minute Loki started, the vibes were eternal. This show brings you in by your neck and just holds you there. It forces you to watch this trauma of your main character and learn about this new world in which he possesses that is so familiar to the one that we find ourselves in now. The joke of this whole Phase 4 is that it's been about trauma, and this definitely doesn't stray from that formula, but cements it even further. Seriously, I'm just so enamored with the fact that a Moon Knight show is even made, and the fact that they delivered such a quality product and spent so much time with attention to detail. That was having Mohamed Diab in the director's seat, picking his own cinematographers and soundtrack designers, with those sci-fi assists from Benson and Moorhead. The two creative teams behind this, combined with Marvel's general brand, as well as with the two lead actors in Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke, supplemented even more by the supporting cast of Calamawy and F. John Abraham. It's just great to see a character that I love so much handled with such care. I was super excited for it going in, but I was prepared to not be completely in love with it because it's a character that I hold so dear. But that's the cool thing about Moon Knight. When it comes to his storyline,
it's kind of ambiguous.
and the fact that the show is able to tackle that, as well as the dark nature of the character overall, tie it all in to equal an utterly mind-blowing mental study of a character, is exactly what I wanted and more. My rating for Marvel's Moon Knight series is a 9.4 out of 10. Have you guys caught Moon Knight's Egyptology extravaganza? Let us know what you thought about in the comments below, and we'll see you guys later this week for a review of Doctor Strange 2 and the Multiverse of Madness. We'll see you guys next time. Ben and Bev, out.